Ghost, Aliens, and Beyond.
Hi all and welcome to another episode of Ghost, Aliens and Beyond. As Simon tries to put me off waving his hands about, it didn't work. I'd like to say it's October, so happy Halloween everybody. Simon's got, Halloween. Apparently, if you're watching the video, he's got a beer of Corona, not the actual Rona. So
well,
Simon,
I feel like I've got it, so why not give yourself an excuse?
It's nice to see you again. Probably people don't probably know we have not talked properly for ages. We've both been off work on holidays.
Yeah, about a month, really. Yeah, nearly a month.
It's been a long time. You've left me alone. Stop stalking me. It's been great.
See, I think that's the other way around. If you're wondering, guys, I was in another country for a bit.
Yeah, his restraining order had to send him to another country.
Yeah, I was jet setting.
While he was doing that, I was fault parking and not saying nice things about Brighton. And you can see both of them right now on YouTube on the Epic Shows. So check them out.
That way. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. He's getting used to it. Simon's in for a shock. What we've done for the show before we have to have a quick little chat. For the people who are listening on the podcast, yet again, this show is on YouTube as well. You can see the normal background right now, but when it goes into Simon's part on his own, my part on my own, and my interview with Sinead from Mickey Waffles, I've done a special October background and done loads of effects for it, so I hope people enjoy that. But Simon, those things happening, what country you was in? I'm going to not say the country because I think I'm going to say the wrong one.
Not really. I don't think there's much history in, because I went to the island of Corfu, which is in Greece. They have got a steep history. Whether they've got a haunted history, I'm not sure. All I know that Prince Charles was born there. Not Prince Charles, the other one. The
Andrew?
King. No. Queen. Yeah, Philip. Yeah, he was born in Corfu.
Bloody great. Prince Philip, say what you want and not give a shit.
So, when they say he's Greek, he's actually from... I think they say he's from actually just outside of Corfu town, which is in the middle of the island now. It's to the north of the island, which is it's a lovely island. It's so peaceful, so quiet. People just getting on with life and drinking plenty of these.
If anybody's wondering, we are recording this on the 30th September. If you see my eyes are wandering, I've got football on my tablet. American fans, soccer, it's Man United and Brighton playing each other. I believe Simon's just got off the toilet after Newcastle nearly got beaten by what I believe was a Div 2 side.
Yeah, but they have had 4 good runs. This is the 4th game of a good run. They beat Cardiff. I think it was West Ham in the last one? So they had a few good scalps, I think.
I can't remember, but the sheer fact is that Chelsea went out in that cup, and as if you don't know people, if you don't follow the sport, it's the League Cup. It's Carabao Cup. It's its name. It's sponsored.
We'll talk about it up here.
Yeah, around football. But as soon as your team goes out of it, the first words will come out of your mouth is, "It doesn't matter. It's a small tin pot cup." Unless you get to the final, and then you want to win it.
Yeah, if you get to the final, it's a trip to Europe, isn't it? If you get to the final.
Yeah, did you know it's a trip? What I will elaborate on around football. It's a trip to the 3rd tier European Cup next season.
They're doing 3 cups.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
anyway,
we'll see what happens with that.
I'm sure you're bored of us talking about sports and everything like that. Yep. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and over straight to Simon, and he's going to tell us his haunted story from the area that he lives by.
Yeah, I look identical, except I haven't got an earpiece. Figure that one out.
My top's totally different, people. So you'll see when it's me. I've got my stories. As I said, Simon next, then me, then Sinead from Mickey Waffles. This is a great episode. As I said earlier, everyone, happy Halloween. And we'll stay spooky and let's get over to everyone else. Cheers, guys.
Yep, see you in a bit. Hello, guys, and welcome to my ghost stories for Ghost Aliens Beyond for this month. So, a little confession here. I made some notes up and I lost them. I'm sorry, guys. I completely lost all my notes. It would have ended up being about 25 minutes long. But I did find a nice little article from a local paper to me going on about 5 haunted places in my hometown. So I will read that article very in a minute. But I'll just give you a bit of a background. I'm currently living in Bolton, which is just outside of Manchester. It's quite an old town. There's a lot of history in my area. You've got a lot of places that are actually very old. You've actually got an old castle, which a guest on here, Paul, has been visited. It's a derelict castle up on the hills near Rivington Pike, which is on Winter Hill, which is one of the hills before you hit the Pennines, and it's where the mast is for all our TV channels and some of the broadband as well. So that's a little bit of a brief history of the area of Bolton that I live in. Now I will just read out this little article of 5 haunted places. It's got a little bit of history in it. It's got a little bit of ghost stories. There is a video for one of them from 2014. I will send the link over to Phil. Phil hopefully put it in the show notes so you can have a look and see if you think you saw a ghost as well. Because it did actually go around the country in 2014. But I'll get him to link the video from YouTube. You have a look yourself and you make your own decision. So, excuse me, just clear my throat. So I'll just go to censor that there's 5 places that I'm going to talk about in Bolton. Most of them are pubs. Well, now are pubs. They probably were in the past as well. But there's one. The first one I'm going to talk about is called the Old Man and Scythe. It's got a very long and storied history. So I'll just read this article about it. The Old Man and Scythe, one of the oldest pubs in the world, one of the oldest pubs in the whole of Great Britain. It was first mentioned, Man and Scythe, in a chapter in 1251. So it's a very long time ago. So over the last 769 years, it has been rebuilt a number of times and changed hands just as much. But as part of the 16th century, or 1600s, sorry, not 16th century, that's the 15th century. I don't know how they work. But it's part of the 16th century, 1600s. It was owned by the family of James Stanley, the 7th Earl of Derby. On May the 28th, 1644, Stanley was responsible for more than 1,000 people being murdered in Bolton. So obviously, he did a runner. The incident was also known as the Bolton Massacre and was said to be revenge for a siege on his house at the Latham house earlier that year, in which 7 Bolton men were involved. It says it was not until the Battle of Worcester 7 years later when Stanley was eventually captured and brought back to Bolton under military escort to be put to death. So that's the way they used to do things. Should do it now, really. Excuse me. He was beheaded in the Market Cross opposite from where the Swan, which is the pub next door to the Man and Scythe, stands today on October the 15th, 1651. Stanley spent the last few hours inside the family's pub, mostly in the prayer room. This is the ghost that is seen in that video. So get yourself over, have a look at that video and see what you think. And it says, to this day, a chair he is said to have sat in remains inside the building. So that's probably got a lot of history, especially when it's 769 years. So the second place I'm going to talk about is Smithers Hall. It's now more commonly known as Smithers Hall, the coaching house. It's actually a restaurant and venue for weddings. But another Bolton building steeped in centuries of history is Smithers Hall. The Grand Tudor-style Grade 1 listed manor house was recently seen by a worldwide audience as one of the locations used for Netflix the hit series The Game. The English Game, sorry. Locations using... No, I never knew that. So, you've seen that series? that's where it was filmed. One of the oldest manor houses in the northwest of England, medieval records of this building dated back to 1335. Where a lot of these buildings have been rebuilt, its oldest parts inside the Great Hall still date from the 15th century. And a particular fictitious figure, or whatever it is, I can't say that word, horrible. Inside the hall is a footprint that is said to be left by a Protestant martyr who went on to be named as George Marsh. This is a terrible writing, to be honest. Marsh was born and grew up in Dean, but eventually went down south to study at Cambridge University, later preaching around London and Lincolnshire. During the reign of Queen Mary I, or Bloody Mary as she's better known, Protestant. Why did I say Protestant? I'm terrible at reading. Sorry, guys. Protestant reforms and preachers such as Marsh were executed, often being burned at the stake, with the Queen killing more and more whatever. I can't read this. I'm terrible. I'm sorry. Friends urged Marsh to flee the country, but he made the ill-fated decision to return to Bolton and say goodbye to his family first. He was arrested in March 1554 and taken before Sir Roger Barton at Smithers Hall to be interrogated in the Green Chamber. During the interrogation, Marsh is said to have stamped his foot where the Protestantism was the true faith. Right. He was burned at the stake in Broughton, Chester on April 24th, 1555. The footprint Marsh is said to leave at Smithers Hall is said to bleed every year on the anniversary of his death. So that's quite spooky, that one. So that's Smithers Hall. Sorry, my nose is terrible. Sorry, edit that out. Probably won't, but sorry, I've got a bit of a horrible. I said this to Phil, that's why I've been waiting this long, because my nose has been doing my head in for a couple of days. But also, if he edits it out, the edit doesn't, you can enjoy my sniffles. The third place I'm going to talk about is another 16th century manor house called Hollythwood. The very traditional name Hollythwood literally means halls in the woods. It's a 16th century manor house towards the north of the borough. One of the most brilliant and ultimately most tragic occupants over the years was Samuel Crompton. So if you know your history, this is where Samuel Crompton was a pioneer and invented the very first spinning mule between 1775 and 1779. So it's the start of the cotton industry from Samuel Crompton. Despite revolution in the spinning industry, it wasn't a popular invention with everyone, and in 1779 there were riots with the newfangled machinery costing people their jobs. Out of fear, Mr. Crompton dismantled his mule and hid it in the attic until the riots died down. After reassembling it and started to spin again, it wasn't long until people started to ask questions, and by 1781 there was an increased number of dealers coming to Hollythwood to ask how Mr. Crompton span so fast and well. Not a great businessman by any means, Mr. Crompton eventually sold it under pressure for a measly £60, which is around £4,800 in today's money, for an invention that completely revolutionised the cotton industry. See, I just said that. Mr. Crompton fell into debt and eventually died bitter, delusioned and improvised on June the 26th, 1827. The spirit of Mr. Crompton is said to still haunt Hollythwood, where today a museum and has appeared on a TV series Most Haunted in 2008. So another reference you can go look up for. So go and look for that episode of Most Haunted. Back to another thing about Bolton, more pubs. Unfortunately, they're all closed at the moment. Thank you, coronavirus, but never mind. Another one of Bolton Town Centre's pub said to be haunted is the Blue Boar. The now boarded up pub, well, it's actually has reopened recently, and then now it's reshut again. But in Deansgate, it's said to have a room so haunted that it's sealed shut for more than 40 years. I've never heard of this one. Formerly a bedroom on the third floor of the building, the room was eventually opened in January 2011. Once opened, the spirits of a little girl and a very old gentleman who used to be in the army were said to be present. And that's a little bit creepy to me, but, well, that's Bolton for you. And the final one I'm going to talk about is the Turton Tower. If you drive over towards Blackburn and Darwin, along the well thought out road name of the A666, you can see Turton Tower to your left hand side. And if you understand what the A666 or the reference for 666 is, yeah, I've got that passing my house at the moment. I live near the A666. It's formerly known as St. Peter's Way, but it is also named the A666. So a lot of things have happened on that road in the past. I could go into a lot of detail about that one, but there's not really much information about it, unfortunately. But there is a lot of things have happened on that road that are not documented. But right on the border of Bolton and Darwin, Turton Tower is renowned for one of its most haunted buildings in the northwest. Ghost walks regularly take place at this building, with staff and visitors alike reporting a number of ghostly goings on over the years. According to folklore, the tower is haunted by a woman, and her dress can be heard rustling as she makes her way around. It is also home to two skulls, which used to reside at the demolished, some of these names, Timber Bottom Farm in Bradshaw. Yeah, we have some fantastic names up here, don't we? Discovered in Bradshaw Brook in the 1750s, any attempt to remove the skulls used to, it said, cause piercing screams and furniture moving by itself. And that's the end of that article. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into some of the haunted places in Bolton. There is a lot of history in this town. These, obviously, you can just search up like the Manor Scythe, Turton Tower. We've got a lot of old buildings, and it's a lovely place to live. Yes, I'll leave it at that. It is a lovely place, and I've lived around here all my life. But the history is, if you want to go into a deep dive, you can very much go into a deep dive. So I don't know whether you want to do your research or not, but if this is enough to get you a little bit interested, go ahead and have a look. There's plenty of information out there. All you need to search in is Bolton Haunted Places, and loads of stuff comes up. I will, like I said, I will ask Phil to put a link for that YouTube video of the haunting in the Manor Scythe. If you could do me a favour, if you are watching this or listening to it, could you please subscribe to the YouTube channel? It's the Epic Shows on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at tefpod. You can contact us on email alongside tefpod@gmail.com, and go and check out all the shows that are on there. This is part of the Epic Shows YouTube channel, and there's a lot more other stuff on it. You've got what we're on now, which is Ghost Aliens and Beyond. You've got the Epic Florida podcast. You've got around football. So there's plenty of stuff for you to watch. So if you could go and do that for me, that'd be very, very, very fantastic. And I will hand you back to either Phil, or I'm handing you back to myself and Phil. So I'll see you in a bit.
Well, Simon, thank you for them amazing stories of the haunted places in your area. They are quite phenomenal. Quite frankly, I'd love to check them out myself. So let's get into my area now. I live in Sussex. I actually live in Crawley in Sussex. There's only literally one famous place in Crawley that's probably haunted that I know of, and we will get to the old George Hotel in time. It's actually the same story that my nan told me as I was a kid. Never believed her, but now I'm reading on Sussex Live. Just like to say thank you to Sussex Live, reading these online from there, some of the Sussex ones. So if you'd like to check them out, go into Sussex Live's web browser and just look for Sussex Most Haunted Places, spooked by poltergeist, royalty and smugglers. God, they couldn't make that name longer if they tried, could they? Well, let's get to the first one, the Mermaid Inn in Rye. This Grade 2 listed building is a medieval site. Dale, I believe, of Rye is teeming with ghost stories, with legends. It's one of the most haunted inns in the whole of the UK. In fact, there are ghostly tales linked to nearly every room. The most famous being the Hawkhurst gang, local smugglers who used it in the 18th century. The gang, their wives and the mistress, also had to haunt the main building to this day. It said the ghost of the maid and mistress of one of the smugglers who was killed by other gang members for knowing too much haunts him. The wife of another was said to sit in the rocking chair. Guests would wake up in the night to see the chair moving on its own, and the room was always icy cold when this was happening. The chair has since been removed. Obviously, it spooked too many people. There's also a tales of a lady in white. It wouldn't be a haunted place if you didn't have a lady in white. Sitting in a chair by the fire, the ghost of a man walking through a bathroom wall into the main room. Ooh, kind of spooky and nosy, especially if you're having a shower or something. Turn on. Don't want you looking at me. And the man sitting at the end of a bed. Why is he sitting there? Who knows? Was he being nosy, or did he just want company? Who knows? He just wants to make sure you're okay. There's also a story of a duel within the inn. The men fought until one was killed and thrown into the dungeon. The men fought until one was killed and thrown in the dungeon. So one was killed, so I'm guessing the other one was then thrown in the dungeon. His spirits, the dead one was then thrown into the dungeon. I get it now. So once he killed him, threw him in the dungeon, let him roll away. His spirit still haunts the building. Well, that is spooky to say the least. And then the inn is 100 of years old and retains many historic features. The cellar dates back to the 12th century. The building was rebuilt in the 15th century. In fact, they have said to be a secret tunnel from the cellar to the Old Bell Inn in the neighbour's street. That's pretty cool, isn't it? We're going to move on to Arundel Castle. I'm not going to read all the stories from here. I'm just going to choose a select few. And if you want to check them all out, and there is photos on this Sussex Live, as I said, check them out. I'll put the link into the YouTube and the podcast, where all the stuff goes. I can't remember. My head's a bit gone today, guys. Actually, a funny story, if you'd like to know it. It's, I believe, Sunday the 27th as I do this. And usually on a Monday morning before working out, I go to my mum's about 7 in the morning, let her dog and my dog play. And, I just chill there, talk to my mum and all that. Anyway, it's Sunday. I woke up at 7. I'm walking over to my mum's. It took me 15 minutes into the walk to finally realise it's Sunday and not Monday. I ain't going to my mum's. No one's awake. So I'll walk back anyway. But there you go. And she lives in Eiffel, which is older than the actual town Crawley that I live in. So there's a bit of history for you there. Look that up. Anyway, Arundel Castle. This castle certainly has a rich history with links to kings and dukes. It dates back to the 11th century as being the seat of the Dukes of Norfolk and the ancestors for more than 850 years. Arundel itself is no stranger to spooky stories. There have been reports of haunting of St. Nicholas Church. A ghostly priest has been seen standing by the altar. I'm not being rude, but could you imagine getting married or something, or just walking into that church and there he is and boom, he's gone. Catch him on film, that'd be cool. Also scary to a lot of people. There's also a woman in blue. Thank God it's not a woman in white. It gets boring just hearing the people in white. Why do ghosts not own coloured clothes? Well, clearly in Sussex they own blue. Has been seen praying, has also been praying there. And none has been spotted walking in the bell tower. Now, I'm not sure if there's nuns the current day there, but if there's not, that is kind of creepy. We're going to move over to the Norfolk Arms Hotel. Now, in the 1980s, there was said to be a poltergeist. Why other guest reports seeing ghostly, semi-naked man running around the building? Let's hope he was semi-naked upwards and not downwards, or that would spook people in a different way. But back at the castle, there's been a lot of stories about things which go bump in the night. On occasion, it sounded as though someone is working in the kitchen. No one there, clearly. When in fact, there's no one there, as I just said. Then there is a distant rumble of cannons being fired at the castle walls. The building was indeed damaged during the Civil War. Now, is this a little time loop, or it's just replaying, and something's weird, wibbly wobbly, timely wimely that you're hearing it all the time, and it's just replaying it? It's kind of cool in the same way if you actually got to hear it. I think that's something I'd love to actually hear myself. The castle library is said to be haunted by a man dressed in blue. More people in blue. Blue is the colour for Sussex, it seems. He's reading a book, while the ghost of a young girl has been running towards a tower where she once jumped to her death. So clearly she's done suicide, but whatever the problem was for her, it wasn't resolved, and now she's stuck in an entire loop doing the same thing, obviously, over and over again. I feel sorry for it. If some way that could be stopped and set her free, that would be fantastic. Locally, it's also believed that prior to death in a family here, a bird hovers over it, then bumps into one of the windows of the castle tower. Now, this thing can be obviously explained easily. The type of windows, how big they might have been, the reflection coming off the window, the birds may have been confused, and they just lost where they were going. Bang. We've heard about birds flying into windows before. I'm sure a lot of deaths have also happened in these areas and in that castle without the bird. But if it's happened every time in the past, that is something very strange and creepy. Now we are moving to my town, Crawley. We're going to move to the Ramada Hotel, just the outskirts of Queen Square in Crawley, near a lot of hotels, being like the White Hart and all that. Check out White Hart. It's a very old hotel if you're ever in Crawley. Holiday makers jetting off and landing back at Gatwick could stay in the historic hotel. Might even come face to face with former staff member. Now, if I remember right, this former staff member was a lightman or something like that. My nan told me about it. She worked there. She apparently accounted it. She's in her very late 80s. If not, I'd get her on to tell us the story. Great woman, by the way. She also, apparently, back in the day, we're talking about 25 years ago, she had a wing named after her in the hotel. Not sure if it's still called after her, but if it is, that's fantastic. Something I need to check out myself. But she has told me this story, so I think I know it's going to go. He just basically turns things off and all that. Anyway, so the Ramada, locally known as the Georgian, that's its original name, is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in this area. It used to be a coaching inn, and while none of the exterior is the original, there's been a hotel on the site since the 16th century. Its most famous ghost is that of Mark Hurston, a night watchman who was poisoned. Yeah, I remember the poison bit now. Since the staff reported strange goings on, such as a locked cupboard being found open, lights turning off and on, and strange figures being spotted. I've only been in this hotel a couple of times. I've been downstairs in the Octopus Bar sort of nightclub area, still going there. It's quite good for older people as well. You've got the dancing for the youngsters, but they don't actually feel out of place with the older people who just want to have a drink and have a laugh in there as well. So yeah, check that out if you're ever in Crawley. The Octopus at George. Stay at the George Hotel, as known as the Ramada now. Give it a go. And if anything happens, get back to Ghost, Aliens and Beyond on Twitter at GAAB, so GAAB podcast. Get back to me if you've ever stayed there, if anything's ever happened. That would be fantastic. Now, as I say, if you're from Crawley and you're listening and you've got stories you'd like to tell me, you can come on and tell me. I love this town. I've been here since a baby, and I'd love to hear more spooky tales of this great old town. As I said, we've got a park called Ifield, and that is older than the town. So what we're looking at is, say, we've moved to the Shelleys in Lewes. Now, I don't know anything about it. The 16th century building was once owned by Henry Shelley, a relation to a poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley, hence the name, obviously. It was used as a military hospital for officers during the First World War. Although the military apparitions seen in the hotel date back a little bit further, one man has reputed that he has seen the ghost of a cavalier from the Civil War on the staircase. How would you take that? See, I've not really seen things like that, but it amazed me. In 1978, there were reports of a poltergeist activity, which started when a QC said his bed levitated 3 inches during the night. Other activity included chairs moving and clothes hangers and ashtrays being thrown around. Bed levitating, that is scary. That's not earthquakes or anything. If you hear your bed rumbling, you know, there's things that can do that. Big freights, lorries going past, anything like that. But a levitating bed, there is no physical answer for that. That happens, you just stay in that bed scared, I'm guessing. I'm quite a big guy. If that picked me up, I would be scared. I'm brave enough to admit that. Ashtrays running around. Sounds like they just don't want you there, personally. We're going to move on to another one now. I think we can. Nope. We don't want a museum. How about the Lamb House in Rye? The Lamb House was built in the 18th century by a wine merchant and politician. When a storm drove King George I's ship at Cambers ashore at Cambers in 1726, Lamb House was considered the most suitable accommodation for him. So obviously the man of the house, he gave up his room for the king while Mrs. Lamb gave birth to a baby boy, and the king agreed to be the godfather. How cool is that? Godfather, the king of your country. But that's not the building's only claim to fame. American novelist Henry James owned the house writing The Wings of Death, The Ambassadors and The Golden Ball. During his time here, Lamb House appeared as Mr. Langdon's home in James' novel An Awkward Age. The novelist E.F. Benson owned the property until his death in the 1940s, a prolific writer of fiction, ghost stories and non-fiction. He's best remembered for his Map and Lucia novels. Continuing the literary theme, authors and artists have since lived in this property, and it was subject to the book of Joan Aiken called The Haunting Lamb House. And it seems the building has always been haunted, though, with some reports of poltergeist activity. James was reported to have seen an old lady wearing a mantilla, is that M-A-N-T-I-L-L-A, whatever that is, who reportedly helped him with his literary work. So she literally helped him write books. She didn't get paid, but obviously for the love of writing, she was a passionate ghost. It said the author Rumer Godin, who wrote Black Narcissus and lived there for a time, called Priest, and asked him, lived there for a time, and asked a priest to bless the house, including the fridge. I get blessing the fridge, everybody. I don't want them ghosts getting in my fridge, throwing my lovely, delectable food out. Food is mountable and beautiful, always should be blessed. Okay. Now, as I said, I am from Crawley. I don't really know many haunting places here. It's very strange. As old as parts of Crawley, there should be more hauntings, and I'll probably see it on something called Spotted Crawley or the Crawley News, Crawley Observer. They're bringing something up over Halloween. If I find it, I'll share it to Twitter on Ghost Aliens and Beyond. As I said, follow it at GAAB Podcast, and I'll share the links there so you can read them yourself. Also, check out Sussex Live. I'll share that to the show notes on YouTube and the podcast. So if you want to look at more stories and the stories that I've read and a few photos so you can maybe delve into it more, that's entirely up to you. I said the only really haunting things happened, if you go back to episode 1 about me, it's about I feel like a demon sort of evil ghost in my house I battled. Also, when me and my friend Ryan went through Gossip Screen Woods, what's old. And as I said, something in my ear, we've walked through it millions of times. We were in a big open part of it though, and it was a shortcut home from where we used to come back from town. We're about in our 20s, early 20s, I would said. And anyway, something came in my ear and said, "Get out of here, run, get out of here now." And I literally said to him, "Run." And as we started running, about 5 meters in the run, we both looked back and we kept on running. Anyway, we went home. And then the next morning we met up. I said, he goes, "Why did you decide to run?" And he goes, "It felt so cold in there at that point. You said run." And it wasn't cold at first. I think it was around springtime. So, the weather was getting nicer in the UK. And I said, "I heard someone say in my ear in a stern voice, 'Run, get out of here now.'" He said, "Did you look back?" I obviously said yes. And we both looked back. And we both saw a tall, well-built figure behind us. So in the morning, being brave, 20-year-olds, we went back there. And as I said, it's a very open area of this woods. And there was no trees or anything. We figured out how far behind somewhere we exactly would have been. Only thing was a very small tree stump. So if there was someone behind us, something in that would say, let's say, fairy godmother, whatever you want to call it, ghost of the woods, guardian angel, anything like that, something saved us that night. I truly believe. The woods also had a little cottage in it. But God knows how long ago. When I was a kid, I could remember seeing like bathtubs in the floor and everything, old-fashioned, really old ones, style bathtubs, brick walls and that. All gone now, unfortunately. So if anybody from Crawley wants to find it, you're not going to find it. We had the witch's cabin bit of the woods as well, when all the trees were just perfectly straight in line. Always very dark in there. Floor always. It looks creepy. Maybe I'll take a few photos of it. It's not as good as it used to be. Yet again, fortunately, the local council have to be killmongers and boring. They cut bits of the woods down, so you lose its magic of it. But as I said, if you're from Crawley, please get in touch with me if you've got any more spooky areas I should know about. We can have you on the show and you can tell me about them, or even just Sussex in general. Well, I hope you've enjoyed all these. Right now, I think what we're going to do is get in it with my guest in the next part. She's also from the After Dark Network. She's from a great Disney podcast for Disneyland Paris called Mickey Waffles. Her name is Sinead, and she's going to be telling us all about things like haunted shops, banshees, Irish banshees. Say she is from Ireland, so this is brilliant stuff that I didn't fully understand myself, and she explains it brilliantly to us. And also a haunted Disney store. How cool is that? So she did Mickey's Waffles, Disney and that. I also do a podcast with Simon called the Epic Florida Podcast, so we do talk about things like Disney and that. So everything creepily for October has mixed together perfectly. So after this break, we'll go over to Sinead from Mickey Waffles, and I hope you enjoy that part. See you all soon, guys. Welcome to the Epic Florida Podcast.
Yes, you heard it right. This is the Epic Florida Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Simon. I'm also with another host, Phil. We are, as we said, the Epic Florida Podcast. We're going to talk about everything to do about Florida, not just the theme parks, everything. And we mean everything. So follow us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at tefpod. And also, we have an email, tefpod@gmail.com. You know what to do.
Hello, welcome back to Ghost, Aliens and Beyond, and we have another guest, this time from the lovely island of Ireland, basically, and another great podcaster who is on Mickey Waffles. Welcome, Sinead.
Hello, thanks very much for having me.
Oh, it's fantastic to actually have you on here. I mean, I only hear you talk about Disney constantly.
Very true.
We're going to change it up for once, even though I've just found out you have a Disney story from me.
Well, it's not technically a Disney story. It only really takes, the only Disney aspect is that it happens to take place in a Disney store.
That's
so,
fair enough.
Still paranormal related, though. Don't worry.
So before we get into the stories, what's your love for the paranormal? Noil? That's a new word. The paranormal. I've given in. It's kind of built into like Irish culture, to be honest. Like a lot of the kind of like ghosts, fairies, the banshee, all that kind of stuff is so baked into Irish culture. Like I grew up listening to my grandparents and like other family members talking about all of these various different paranormal things. So as much as Ireland is a horrifically Catholic country at times, that kind of like pagan and paranormal aspect to it is still very prevalent within Irish culture. So it's kind of been born and bred in me. So would you say for someone like me who's never been to Ireland, who would normally go just to try drinking, there would be a good places to check out for the paranormal?
Yeah, there's a good few tours you can do actually. There's quite, I'm yet to do it myself, but there's quite a fun, it's like they've taken a double-decker bus and they've completely blacked it out and they bring you around some of the really haunted parts of Dublin, and kind of give you some of the history and some of the different aspects of things. So yeah, I haven't done it myself, but I've heard it's meant to be really, really good, and it's quite good for like getting a bit of history as well.
That does sound fantastic. What part of Ireland are you actually from though? Because I've only told people, and there's obviously Ireland's not as small as people like to think it is.
I'm from Dublin, so I'm from
right,
Dublin.
Maybe it is. Right, so shall we get into your first story? I mean, I'm quite interested. Obviously, everyone knows you love Disney. I love Orlando, more Universal, but I do Disney. So this does get in quite well, actually. So
Yeah, getting a bit of both. So for context, I used to work in the Disney store in Dublin for about 3.5 years. And it's on probably the Irish equivalent of like Oxford Street. It's like the main big, like slightly upper class, like shopping street. That's kind of where it's based. And the store has 5 floors, and the top floor is just kind of storage, like very excessive storage. They try not to use it, and like the lads' toilets. But there's like this little room off it that is considerably colder than the whole rest of that floor, let alone the whole rest of the store. And you would always kind of get a weird vibe from it, so it was always kind of kept locked. But everybody would always kind of reference the fact that the store was haunted. And to be fair, a lot of Ireland, because it's such an old country and all that kind of stuff, a lot of places are deemed as being haunted or to have some form of a spirit in it in some way, shape or form. So the store, everyone in the store had nicknamed the ghost Laura Ashley, because that was what had been in the actual unit before Disney went in there. So she was very lovingly named Laura Ashley.
nice.
And so it was over the Christmas period, and I was a manager at the time, and I was doing a night shift. So I was working 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And there was another manager in as well. And then we each had a staff member in with us to kind of help sort everything out. And there was a lot of stuff to do. So we did divide and conquer. We both were on different floors. We were working different time scales and stuff like that. And me and the girl I was working with, Amanda, had gone and done our break between 2 and 3 a.m. And then the other two were doing it between 2:30 and 3:30. So 3 o'clock, naturally, which an hour, we are downstairs and we're moving stuff around and we're playing music on her phone, which is sitting on the till, maybe like 6 feet away. And she goes upstairs to just get stuff from the stockroom. I'm downstairs. Everything to me anyway seems completely normal. She comes back down and she goes to change the song on her phone. And she had a missed call from the store from like 5 minutes prior.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I didn't ring you because I would have rang the stockroom phone because her phone was right there. And I was like, that's weird. So we rang up to the other two and they were like, yeah, no, we haven't rang anybody. And we were getting a bit like confused at this stage. And because again, the music hadn't stopped. I hadn't rang her. Seemingly nobody else had. And there's quite a few different phone lines for the store. So I said to her, okay, well, why don't you ring back whatever number it is that's rang you? And she did. And one particular phone out of the whole store rang. And it was the one that was like closest to us. And normally if you rang the store, all of the phones would ring.
Okay.
So we were a bit like, okay.
Did it feel cold or anything at the time?
Yeah, there was definitely a weird vibe in the store. And I went down to the basement and kind of checked on the CCTV that the other two weren't messing with us or anything like that. And it was just weird. And we still have no idea who rang her or how that phone call came about or anything like that. But it was
cams.
Sorry?
Did you have security cams?
Yeah.
Did you check them?
I checked them and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the other two ringing her. I couldn't see anybody else in the store or anything like that. So I have no idea what happened or how it happened, but I then had to try and put my like serious face on and because she was starting to panic and try and get through the rest of the shift and then run out the store at 7 a.m.
I can imagine no one wanted to work on their own at that point.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Isn't it a shame you didn't leave a voice message?
I know. You think they'd at least tell you where they were or something.
Yeah. Well, imagine if someone picked it up though, and you actually had the voice of the apparition on there at that time.
Oh God, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that, to be honest.
The absolute opposite. I'll try and have a conversation.
Have a grand old natter. Yeah. So that was when I was in Disney, and then on the same street, literally across the road, I worked for Vans for a little while. And one of my best friends had worked there, and she would often send me videos of like cash drawers like getting thrown across the floor for seemingly no reason, shoe boxes getting pulled out from the shelves, like bars that would have like belts or like t-shirts and stuff on them just completely like falling to the ground, even though there would have been no actual like gravical, that's the wrong word. There'd be no way with gravity for that to be able to happen. There's no like actual way that could have happened. But she would be very traditional, and seemingly you're not supposed to name spirits, because if you name spirits they can attach themselves to you.
Oh, right.
So she was very apprehensive and she wouldn't let anybody name the ghost. But it was shortly after I'd started, the office used to be down in the basement. And then down the very back of the store in the basement, there was kind of like a little corridor, and then there was the lift. And I was opening one morning with one of the guys, and I was up in the office, he was down the complete other end of the store. And he came like running up to me really like aggravated and really angry. And I was like, "Are you okay?" He was like, "Why are you calling me for? Like, why do you keep calling me and not answering me?" And I was like, "I haven't done anything." I was like, "I haven't called you, I haven't looked for you or anything like that." And he said that for the last like 5 minutes it had sounded like I was right there behind him saying, "Charlie, Charlie."
So it was mimicking your voice.
Yeah, and he would turn around and I wasn't there, and he would be like, "What the hell is going on?" And he was getting really annoyed because he thought I was just messing with him. And I was like, "I literally haven't moved." And he was so convinced that I was doing it that I had to go and show him the security cameras that I hadn't moved the entire time, but something was behind him calling his name consistently.
Just saying, not asking him to go anywhere or anything, just saying.
No, it was kind of, he said it sounded like I was kind of calling him to come and help me with something, like, "Charlie, like, come over," or whatever, but it was just kind of saying his name.
Well, that is proper creepy. I always get worried when I hear stories about ghosts what can actually mimic other people's voices.
Yeah. Yeah, he was properly spooked.
It sounds like you yourself, though.
Maybe it is me.
It sounds like you evoke them.
Maybe it is me. But again, a lot of buildings in Dublin would be classed as haunted. The girl that I get my tattoos from, she's on a street called Drury Street.
Oh, right.
And she has a private studio that you walk up a flight of stairs. And she actually only mentioned this to me the last time I was in, because she's a bit wary of telling people if she's not sure if they're into paranormal stuff or if they're okay with paranormal stuff, because obviously she doesn't want people to get freaked out, because people are freaked out anyways getting tattoos.
It's the best place to tell it then.
I know, right? So she was saying she would often hear what sounded like people walking up the stairs, but again, it's a private studio and the only people that have keys are the other girl that works upstairs, her and her boyfriend. And she would often hear what sounded like footsteps going up the stairs, and then she'd call out assuming it would be the other tattoo artist, and they wouldn't be there. And this had gone on for months and months and months and months. And they then, because they were doing up the studio and stuff like that, and there's another flight of stairs up to the other studio room and up to the bathroom, and the bathroom is at the very top of the stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs she had put a, not quite full length, but like a mirror so that people could like check placement and stuff like that of tattoos. And one of the other girls had came in, the other girl that rents the other room came in and said, "Why did you move the mirror?" And she was like, I didn't move the mirror. Like, why would I move the mirror? And the mirror had been like screwed onto the wall.
Oh, okay.
And when they came in, it had been taken off the wall and placed the other way. So rather than it facing the bathroom and like up the stairs, it was turned this way. So it was kind of facing out into the waiting room. And then seemingly what they found out was if you place a mirror directly opposite a bathroom, if a spirit happens to be in that vicinity, they can get trapped there. So they think the steps that they'd been hearing was this spirit being stuck between the mirror and the bathroom and kind of going back and forth and not being able to kind of go anywhere else. Now, how they managed to take a mirror off and set themselves free, I have no idea.
So that's pretty creepy when, as you say, it was quite a big mirror as well, and for it to physically take it off the walls and move it out of the way, it's kind of funny as well. It sounds like I've had enough of this. I'm frustrated.
Honestly, screw this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, she says she hasn't heard she hasn't kind of sensed anything in a little while. But she had there was a brother and a sister that would go into her quite regularly, and they were, I think she said they were Mayan. And they would talk quite a lot about paranormal because, again, kind of similar to like Irish culture, it's kind of built into their culture. And she said that all of a sudden, one of the brothers stopped going with her. Like anytime his sister would get tattooed, he'd go with her, and then he stopped going. And she asked, like, is everything okay with your brother? Like, I just haven't seen him in a while. And seemingly he had come out of the bathroom at one stage and suddenly felt like somebody had their hand around his throat. At the top of the stairs, and he got so freaked out that he was like, yeah, I'm not going in there anymore. I don't care what that spirit is, but I'm not going near it.
Was this after the mirror as well?
I think it was before they moved the mirror.
Right.
Well, before whoever moved the mirror. So it could have been when it was kind of trapped between, that it was just trying to take its frustrations out on anybody.
Yeah, maybe it was blaming him for the mirror.
Maybe. But
maybe a ghost who doesn't like men.
That's also, well, you say she, seemingly the spirit is called Kevin, because again, she'd mentioned it to a couple other people that she kept hearing footsteps and stuff like that, and somebody was like, oh, well, maybe you do have a spirit, you should ask it its name. And Keelan was like, oh, I don't know about doing that. And they were like, I have a feeling its name is Kevin. Don't know where they picked it out from, but they just decided that this spirit was called Kevin. And then she mentioned it to somebody else a couple months later, and they were like, you should ask its name. And they also said, I feel like its name's Kevin. And she'd gone to get her hair done with a friend somewhere in Dublin, and one of the girls in the salon, they were talking about this whole thing, and that she thought the studio was haunted and all this kind of stuff. And the girl was like, oh, I used to work on Drury Street. She was like, we used to always talk about the ghost that was all along the street. His name was Kevin. So
that is crazy.
And like, this was a totally random person. Keelan hadn't mentioned the Kevin thing. She just had mentioned that her studio felt haunted. And this girl was like, oh yeah, the Drury Street ghost, Kevin, everybody knows him. And it was just such a like casual thing.
Kevin, leave people alone and stop scaring them.
I know. Getting a tattoo is traumatic enough. They don't need to be getting grabbed.
God, it's not really a scary name for a ghost. Hello, I'm Kevin.
Yeah, I know. In fairness, though, we called the Disney one Laura Ashley, so I don't know.
Being scared of it. What if it was
True.
Walt? He wasn't happy with what you lot were doing at night, not working hard enough.
This is very true, actually. Stranger things have happened, so.
He might have been bored. He thought, I've had enough of America. Let's have a look how the shops are in Ireland are going.
Go around and check in on everybody.
Is that the only actual stories you have for me?
They're my stories, yeah.
Quick question. Any UFO stories?
I don't have, well, I don't think I have any UFO stories. There was one time I was driving back from being down the country, and just kind of a streak of light went across the sky. No idea what it is. Could have just been a shooting star. I don't know.
Oh, we're going to take it as a UFO. There you go, people.
There we go. We'll take it as a UFO.
So we're going to get into your next topic now, I believe is about banshees. Now, I know little bits about banshees, so would you like to tell everyone?
Well, I'm intrigued. What do you know about the banshee?
Well, what I've seen, like, is like they're harvingers of sort of death as well. If you see a banshee and you see the singing and screaming, and that pretty much means your life's coming to an end. Is that correct? Kind of.
So the banshee in Irish means fairy woman. So she's meant to be kind of the female fairy, because you've got your fairies, you've got your banshees, all these various different aspects of kind of Irish folklore. So the banshee is meant to be kind of like she warns you of death. Not necessarily your death, but she warns of a death coming. So seemingly in kind of like history and stuff, there's seemingly meant to be 25 banshees. Now, I don't know where the 25 banshees has come from, but seemingly there's meant to be 25 banshees.
Interesting.
And they are linked to old Irish families. So ones that go back years and years and years and years. And what is kind of alleged to happen anyways is that when there is going to be a death in one of these old Irish families, you get some form of a warning from the banshee. And there's about there's kind of endless lists of what people claim are signs from the banshee. The most common one, though, is the 3 knocks. So you would get a knock on a door or a window or something like that. 3 very clear knocks, and then that's kind of your warning that somebody in the family is going to die, or somebody in the family has just died. So I have mercifully never directly actually had an experience with the banshee. However, my dad has.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So one of his mum's cousins or something like that was in the house, and they were sitting there, and all of a sudden there was these 3 very loud, very hollow knocks. It didn't sound like somebody knocking on the door. It didn't sound like somebody knocking on a window or anything like that, but they were just these very loud, very hollow knocks. And I think my uncle went to go open the door to see if somebody was there or something like that. And my nanny's cousin kind of said, "Don't bother, there's nobody there. I know what that means. I need the phone." And rang, and one of her family members had just gone into hospital and was gravely, gravely ill. But my dad said it was just really bizarre because her entire demeanour changed. She knew exactly what that sound was. She knew exactly what that sound meant. And signs on it, the person then died about 3 days later. So yeah, a lot of the kind of, I suppose, kind of history behind it comes from, so Ireland used to have this tradition of keeners at funerals back in like the 1400s. And basically there were these women that were professional criers and professional mourners at funerals. So families would pay these women to go to funerals and basically just hysterically cry and wail about the fact that this person had died. Don't know why. No idea. We have an air for the dramatics, seemingly.
I hate to say this, but everyone would cheer at my one once I'm gone.
But it was a thing, and there were these women that were professional keeners, and they would get paid in alcohol, and they would get paid in food and all this kind of stuff, and that was genuinely their job. They were more often than not alcoholics, because a lot of them did get paid in alcohol, but their job was to go and to wail excessively at people's funerals, and it was a thing to have a keener at your funeral. And then, like all things, Catholic Church came in and they were like, absolutely not having keeners at funerals. And all of a sudden it was completely outlawed. So something that was a very common thing to have and something that women had built their entire lives around was suddenly dissipated, wasn't allowed, was completely banned. So there were now all these alcoholic women that had just wailed for their entire lives, now had nothing to do, and seemingly would kind of be seen around the streets wailing and screaming and moaning and all this kind of stuff because they had nothing else to be doing now. So a lot of people kind of attribute the Banshee folklore to those original keeners as kind of like the history behind it. Yeah. And maybe it was those particular women when they died, rather than kind of coming back as traditional spirits or traditional ghosts or whatever, they then came back as these banshees that would then attach themselves to those old Irish families that they would have been keening for at funerals. And they would then just wail and let them know when people were going to die, seemingly.
It's a strange job to have, and then taking it on to your next life. And well, hopefully no banshees that come where I live, because I don't particularly want that.
Well, seemingly, see, they get a bad rap. So if you watch, I don't know if you've ever seen Darby O'Gill and the Little People, which is the one Irish Disney movie. It's on Disney Plus. It's worth a watch. I suggested it as the G movie for the Diz After Dark guys, and they all loved it. So it sounds really cringe, and it is pretty cringe, but there's a fairly good depiction of a banshee in it.
I'd say
so.
Did Craig love it? Because Craig loves every movie he watches.
He did, but the rest of them also loved it as well.
Okay,
so
what's it called again?
If that gives it any credence.
What's it called again?
Darby O'Gill and the Little People. It's from the 50s or 60s, I think, maybe.
I think I will.
Has a very young Sean Connery in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Doing a very dodgy Irish accent, but we'll let him away with that.
It can't be the one in the last movie which has come out from Disney.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong there.
That's terrible accents.
But there's quite a like decent depiction of a banshee in that. The only, I suppose, kind of thing they get wrong is she doesn't come and take people. She's not the Grim Reaper, but she does kind of wail, and that kind of sound was something that struck the fear into me as a child, because I would hear all these stories about the banshee and combing her hair, and if you ever found a comb when you were out, you like absolutely should never touch it because that was from the banshee, and if you brought it home, she was going to kill somebody. And like, again, these are all things that you're taught as a child in Ireland.
What is wrong with you?
We have a weird association with the paranormal. It's so like ingrained into the culture that it's just part and parcel of it. But some other kind of heralds of the banshee, or signs of the banshee. So there's the 3 knocks is kind of the most common one that a lot of people mention. There's finding combs and excessive numbers of combs places. I once had my nan tell me that she once left a family member's house and everywhere around was just dead frogs, and seemingly that was a sign of the banshee. I don't know. That happened to her when she was like 20 or something like that. I think crows can also be a sign of the banshee. And then that like screeching, like wailing, screeching, all that good stuff. So you'd easily know she's about, seemingly.
I'll ask her to keep the noise down. Excuse me. I'm trying to do a podcast.
So yeah, that's the banshee. And in completely unrelated terms, there were crisps out when I was a child. This is, I mean, vaguely kind of links back to the banshee, but they were called Banshee Bones, and it was the only time there's ever been like a commercial product about a banshee before Disney decided to name those Avatar things banshees. And they've actually only brought them out back this year as like they haven't been out since I was a child, so probably about 15, 20 years. And they've brought them back this year for Halloween, and I'm very excited about them.
If Craig's listening, he's going to want them.
He is going to want them, yeah. Most likely. They're very nice.
Craig.
Although he still hasn't eaten the last ones I brought him, so.
Oh, Craig.
I know.
That's not very good then, is it?
Disappointing. Very disappointing.
That's fantastic. Anything else you can think of?
Not really.
Well, do you want to leave it there, and then we just we'll give a few plugs out now for yourself. So wait and tell everybody about your podcast and obviously your social medias.
Yeah, so I'm on a podcast called Mickey Waffles, which is predominantly Disneyland Paris focused, but we kind of talk about a bit of everything. Not you really for like kiddie ears, as I'm Irish, I punctuate sentences with swear words, so it comes part and parcel of it. And yeah, so you can check us out on most podcast platforms. We're also on Instagram at Mickey Waffles Pod. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
I didn't know about it until it joined the After Dark Podcast Network, but once I started listening to it, I've been addicted.
Oh, that's good. Thanks for that.
And as you say, it's not so PG, so it makes it a bit more exciting. And I like when you do call them out, Disney, when they don't do things as well as they should do.
Yeah, well, when you work for Disney for like 3.5 years, you kind of lose a little bit of that pixie dust. So you're not as kind of jaded to everything, shall we say?
I lost it just because of the price the parks are getting, but that's another story. That is brilliant. No, I just want to say thank you for coming on. Anybody you know who'd want to come on themselves, just say tell them to come on here if they've got any ghost stories, any paranormal, any aliens. And that's pretty much it from me. Again, thank you for coming on, and
anytime.
Everybody get onto Mickey Waffles, and if you're listening onto Apple, listen to it. Give it 5 stars, give it a good comment. And also, guys, if you're listening to Ghost Aliens Beyond, just want to point out I am an original Amazon podcast now, as we are now on Amazon as well. So is Mickey Waffles on there yet?
No, I'm still yet to figure it out, but I will sort that out. I've not on at the weekend, so I'll figure that out.
I'm sure do the RSS feed. Shout out to Simon, he's on figuring out it all. But yeah, everybody, like, subscribe, everything Mickey Waffles wise. Tell them that you found them by listening on here. And please, again, as I always say, people, if you've got anything out there, come onto the show and tell us about it. We just want to know your stories. And Sinead, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching or listening to another great episode of Ghost, Aliens and Beyond. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GAAB Podcast. If you have any supernatural stories you'd like to share yourself, email us on ghostaliensandbeyond@gmail.com. And remember, grab the popcorn, turn the lights off, and prepare to be scared.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.